Braun-Duin, and Matt Nass, 2 players sitting at 10 and 1.
This is a big match here. There's only 3 players in the tournament at 10 and 1. Going into the legacy portion at the end of the day with an 11-1 record is about as close as you can get to being locked for top 8.
And I know, talking with Osip just, during the last match that we covered, watching Matt Nass play, we said, hey, if Matt Nass knew that he was going to go 6-2 in Standard when he was playing Elves and Legacy, he'd be thrilled. He would be thrilled.
All right, so let's bring you up to speed. Braun-Duin's playing Esper control. Matt Nass is on blue-white control. An excellent, so a very dynamic matchup here.
You're in heaven.
This is great. Well, Brian's Esper deck's a little different. He just has a full 4 main deck Blood Barons, no Aetherlings.
Yeah, and he's got this crazy creature sideboard as well, where he's got Nightveil Specters, Pack Rats, multiple Sin Collectors as well. So he has a ton of creatures, and you see Sin Collector going to be put on the stack here against Nass.
Yeah, well, he certainly is part of the Shaheen Sarani school here. Look, he has 3 Elspeths, 4 Jaces in the main. That is so many Planeswalkers. He does not have, in the main deck, a counter spell outside of 2 Dimir Charm.
Yeah, which do we even count that?
Not in this matchup.
Yeah.
I mean, you can counter all of Matt's sorceries, which is Supreme Verdict.
Yeah. Going to be a tough one to counter.
Yeah. So Brian really is, despite the fact that they're both control decks, this post-board game is really kind of one is an aggro deck here.
Yeah, he's basically a tap-out control deck after sideboard. He's Nightveil Spectre and Sin Collector in play. Nass does have a Jace that's at 5 right now, but Nightveil Spectre in this type of mirror-esque match is really, really quite good, as most things that you turn over you'll be able to cast. And, of course, land drops are key, which Nightveil Spectre can provide you with as well. So that's what BBD is going to do first. He's going to put a Plains into play. Now he's going to tap 5 mana. So what's this going to be?
Well, it looks like it's going to be a Blood Baron of Viscopa. He doesn't have to leave up mana for counter spells because he doesn't have any.
Yeah. So there's a Dissolve from Nass. Immediately going to counter that. Bottoms up goes the top card. And Nass is going to untap, take a draw. Let's see what he finds. A Detention Sphere, which is pretty useful, actually.
Yeah, so really in this matchup, what all Matt has to do is he has to answer everything. He doesn't really have to care about his own threats at all, because he really doesn't have many in the first place. So you see he found his Elixir. That's pretty important. Like, the Elixir's almost a free roll in this matchup. I think because of how Brian's built his deck, it's more helpful to think of Brian as a mid-range deck here.
I think you're actually right about that. Just because, again, you're not jockeying for position with counter spells, and we're not having any gainsay wars or anything like that. He's just tapping out with discard and creatures and all the things that a mid-range deck does.
He has removal spells, discard, and threats. And just all really good cards. And the question is, can Matt answer all of them?
Well, from what we've seen when Brian plays against Blood Control, the answer has been no.
Right. Agreed. Matt, so he had the option to Detention Sphere or land Elixir. He really does need the Sphere. At the same time, putting Elixir on the bottom of the deck is a really dangerous place to be for the blue-white control deck.
That's what I was going to say, too, is that now he okay, so actually, what I thought he was going to do, okay, so he puts Sphere on the bottom and takes the Elixir, because it looked like he was casting the Sphere. So I was with you with, is he actually going to put Elixir on the bottom of his deck? The answer is no. So he plays the Sphere from his hand to take care of the Nightveil Spectre. Now he plays the Elixir, which is going to resolve, of course, because BBD doesn't have any counter spells that can take care of that. Plays the Plains and passes the turn back with Mutavault at the ready.
There aren't even counter spells in Brian's sideboard.
Yeah. Don't need no Dissolves. We don't need Syncopates here.
This is almost just Esper mid-range.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. He uses a ton of Planeswalkers and just tapping out every single turn. And every card that he casts is an absolute haymaker, too.
Yep, every single card can win a game on its own. From Nightveil Spectre to Blood Baron to Elspeth. Maybe not Sin Collector. That would take some extra work. But that's more like a spell with a creature kicked onto it.
Sure. Sin Collector is going to knock Jace down to 1. Didn't know if Nass wanted to trade his Mutavault with that. The answer is a resounding no, as Jace moves down to 1 counter.
Yeah, Matt only cares about Jace insofar as it draws cards. He doesn't really... Remember, Matt's not really going to protect any of his own cards here. All his counter spells and removal spells are going to be saved for Brian's threats, because Brian has so many of them.
Blood Baron of Viscopa going to come down to the second main phase. You see, BBD's got a ton of cards in his hand right now, too.
Yeah, it looks like before we came into play that Brian established the Revelation advantage. He has 2 Revelations in the yard. What's interesting about that is that normally when one deck in this mirror resolves a Revelation, they kind of bury the other deck. But because of how Brian's built here, he's not going to counter Matt's Revelations. So if Brian Revelations first, Matt still gets to play. If Matt Revelations first, it's possible that he can lock Brian out of the game.
Watergrave going to come into play tapped. Elixir is going to shuffle some things in here, except for that one Sphinx's Revelation that was removed via Sin Collector.
Yeah, so here's where where things can get tough for Brian. Matt's increasing the density of his deck pretty significantly from that elixir.
Nass is going to untap a bunch of lands. He'll take a draw. He draws a Pithing Needle.
Yeah, not too much help right now, but I think you can preemptively just name Elspeths with the Pithing Needle.
Jace is going to take up to 2, so we'll see that come into play for the next turn. Hallowed Fountain going to come and play tapped, and Nass just passes the turn back.
Yeah, he is short on control cards right now. He has at least another land and a Pithing Needle and only a 4-card hand.
See a Sin Collector over there for BBD, and the thing I like about his deck is that he can always check to make sure the coast is clear with Sin Collector and Thoughtseize.
Right. That's the danger about when you play blue-white from the Esper side, is that Esper can just clears away the counter spells and then starts casting more threats.
Dissolve is going to immediately counter that Sin Collector. Nass couldn't counter it fast enough. This is going to scry now.
You either counter it or you counter it, right?
Yeah.
It's gonna get the Dissolve one way or the another. Better, at least this way you get to scry one and then it can be reshuffled.
All right, so let's see what BBD is going to do now, because now the coast is most likely clear for him to resolve some sort of big spell. The question is, which big spell does he want to resolve?
Yeah, and he doesn't have Aetherling. That's always the one that control decks would be most scared of. But Jace is pretty good.
And that's going to get negated.
Yeah, it does look like Brian still has a pair of Sphinx's Revelations left in his hand, so
he plays his land, taps 3 mana. Now D-Sphere is going to take care of that Jace. Nass will consult his hand very quickly. Bye-bye Jace. And no attacks.
Yeah, so there's a Revelation in Brian's hand. I think maybe just one, but Matt doesn't have one right now, which is pretty relevant at the moment.
What Matt has right now is lands and Pithing Needle, nothing else.
So let's go back. Brian did not attack with the Blood Baron last turn.
Which I like, because had he attacked, there was a Jace trigger that would have gone on the stack, would have made Blood Baron into a 3/4, and then 2 Mutavaults could have taken it down.
Right.
So no reason to give Nass the option to do that right now, especially when Brian feels like he's in the driver's seat. And by every indication right now, from looking at Matt Nass's hand, he is in the driver's seat, as these 2 creatures are going to attack, and 2 Mutavaults are going to double block that Blood Baron. A profitable trade there for Brian.
Yeah, I mean, getting 2 lands from a control deck is pretty good. Matt, and especially when Brian has a Revelation in hand to find more threats. I think what Brian needs to be careful of is he needs to count threats in his deck. Remember that Matt's deck is endless for the most part. You know, Brian, he has 3 Barons in the yard, right? He only has a 4th one in his deck, and once he goes through the 4th one, it's gone.
Yep.
So he has to make sure that he still has things left. His deck doesn't. If both decks went on forever, Brian could be a lot more aggressive.
Here's a Revelation for 5. You see he draws a lot of spells there. He's got an Elspeth, he's got a Jace, he's got a Thoughtseize to clear the way, Nightveil Spectre, and a Sin Collector in play. So BBD sitting at 32, Nass sitting at 22. You can certainly say that Braun-Duin is in the driver's seat, and he is going to concede this game pretty quickly as Nass, because Nass is up a game, so he can move on to the 3rd and final one.
Well, blue-white control needs all the time it can get. Brian's the aggro deck here. Brian can win in 20 minutes. Matt needs all 20 to win.
Yeah. That is definitely for sure. As we're going to take a look again at the sideboards really quickly here. Both players again tied up here and sitting at 10-1. So this is a very important round for these guys who are looking to top 8. Nass is going to be on the play. Does he change anything up now?
Well, he's not going to change stuff, but things between play and draw. I think he now has a better picture of Brian's deck. If he didn't already suspect that Brian had 0 counter spells, I think he's almost certain Brian had 0 counter spells this game. If Brian resolves 2 large Sphinx's Revelations and still never countered a thing, the odds of that happening if Brian had a counter spell are so low that Matt probably realizes that he needs to play like it's a mid-range deck. What that means is when you play against a mid-range deck, now you have to think, all right, what are the threats? So you think about the things that Brian's going to win with. They are Blood Baron of his Scopa, Elspeth, Jace. Those are things you've seen. Matt's seen enough of them that he probably suspects multiples of all. So looking at the sideboard, well, if he didn't have the negate already, he would board it in. We do know he does have the negate. He may not have boarded in. He has 2 Celestial Flares. It's very possible he did not board those in last game, and I think he might use them this game because they can possibly take care of a Blood Baron.
And now that he knows that there's so many creatures from Braun-Duin's sideboard, I think he would just want extra creature removal at this point.
Right. Well, his removal is a little conditional in that, well, he has 2 Last Breaths. You know, those don't really kill what he's trying to kill. The interesting thing is that Matt's board has cards like he has 3 Gainsay in his board, and I'm not even positive that he wants to be using it in this matchup anymore.
Yep.
When you think about Brian's Haymakers, you know, his 7 biggest Haymakers are all white and black.
4, 5, 6, and 7. Both players going to lay out their opening hands here. So game number 3, you do see the clock. We're underneath 20 minutes here. It does take Nass a little while to win the game, where BBD does have creatures to be able to win in a timely fashion. Nass is happy. Looks like BBD is happy. And we are going to go to our third one here. So Temple of Deceit is going to start things off.
Yeah, remember, Matt is not playing an Esper deck. He just has 2 temples in the deck for value.
There's a Temple of Silence there from BBD. He's going to leave the card on top. Pass the turn over here. Nash draws a Mutavault. There's an island. Pass the turn back.
Yeah, I think he goes ahead and goes with the island here so that he can build his way just toward Jace and possible Supreme Verdicts at the same time. We'll get to see his hand, though. He only has a 3-lander, so Mutavault's his only remaining card. He has 2 Detention Spheres, a Sphinx's Revelation, a Gainsay, and a Jace. If I'm Brian here, I'm probably taking the Jace.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you here, because that's the only card that's going to allow him to draw extra cards in this situation. And right now, Nass needs lands, and he needs them badly, so that is exactly what Brian does take, is he does take Jace. Now Brian also needs to get through a Gainsay and, a bunch of removal. But I think he can, find a way to do that, as Nass does draw an Azorius Charm and passes the turn back. So not only does Nass need lands, but he needs white lands as well.
Yeah, this could be very bad for Matt.
There is an island, and we'll see if BBD is going to play. He's going to play a Sin Collector.
Right.
So there's the grip.
Yeah, he's just tearing apart Matt's hand. Sin Collector, if you played any block at all, is excellent against Revelation decks.
It's so good against them.
And now Matt's in a rough situation. He is stuck on land. Brian looks to capitalize on it.
Yeah. As we often say here in the booth, the first person to miss a land drop in these Revelation mirrors is often the person that does lose, and Nass misses land number 4. And even if he had hit it, again, it would have to be one that produces white mana to be able to turn on his hand. And now here's a Thoughtseize. It looks like Brian's going to try to clear the path for something, as there's 2 Gainsays, 2 Spheres, and a Charm.
Yeah, and this is brutal. The 3rd discard spell is just, he's really just destroying Matt's hand right now. I mean, what he can do, say all it takes right now is for Brian to have a Blood Baron in hand. He can take the Azorius Charm, which he did. The thing about Detention Sphere, Gainsay is that none of them answer Blood Baron.
Revelation, the draw there for Nass, so again, another brick. BBD will draw a card, and he actually just does draw Blood Baron off of the top. Does he have the 5th land? Uh-oh.
No, he doesn't have. He's in a Revelation for 1.
On the main phase. Maybe on the upkeep, actually, here.
Yeah, I think he knows that Matt's... normally you wouldn't make that play, but Matt is so far stuck on his lands right now that Brian just desperately wants to make sure that he gets to play this Blood Baron.
Yeah. So Rev for 1's going to resolve. And that was in Nass's upkeep there, trying to make him tap low for Gainsay. Nass does draw an island and pass the turn back. So BBD will untap. He did draw his 5th land. Now he's drawn his 6th one in Watery Grave. Sin Collector is going to come across, put Nass down to 14, and now the Baron is going to show up for sure.
I want to point out that the upkeep play, you might want to play the Revelation for 1 main phase, or you think you don't want to play it main phase so that if you play the land, you can put it into play if you draw the land. I think Brian wisely didn't do that because he was so committed to casting Blood Baron anyway that he didn't really care whether it was going to happen the next turn regardless.
Yeah. Azorius Guildgate shows up, so Nass does have his 5th land, and he finally has a white mana. But Blood Baron is here, and it is ready to just keep bashing him in.
Yeah, well, Matt doesn't have an answer to Blood Baron in his hand, despite the fact that he has 2 Detention Spheres, 2 Gainsays. And the scary part is that Brian knows this.
And, if Nass were to have an answer, like Averted, he would need to run off another white land, which he just did.
Right. That's probably the best draw he could have. It's a land. It means his Revelation gets to be for 3 this turn. And then he has to hope to draw a Supreme Verdict to start.
So there's your white land. Pass the turn back.
Yeah, Matt's locked into his line here. It's going to be Revelation for 3, untap Supreme Verdict with Gainsay up, and a bunch of fingers crossed.
Yeah. Hey, if that's what it takes. It's not over for the blue-white control player, but it's going to be very, very difficult.
Well, Brian can force the issue. Brian has drawn Jace this turn, and what he can do is, thanks to the Jace, he could just run out Jace here if he wants, because Matt really couldn't afford to Gainsay it.
And the one thing you see there is Nass in BBD's upkeep cast his Sphinx Revelation for 3 in fear of counter magic. He wants BBD to actually tap some mana before he draws a card. But what we know, just like you guys at home know, is that there is no counter magic in Brian's deck.
It'll resolve whenever Matt wants to cast it.
And you get a huge advantage when you have players that are playing around counter magic, ready for counter wars, boarding in their own counter magic, and you don't have any because they don't have knowledge of your deck list. You see Jace is going to minus here to show you a Temple of Silence, a Nightveil Spectre, and another copy of Blood Baron of Escopa.
Yeah, and that second white source will enable Brian to eventually cast this Elspeth that's in his hand as well. And Brian just has so many threats right now.
Temple of Silence going to show up. Time for a little scry. He takes a look. Looks like it's moving towards the bottom, and it is. Going to pass the turn back. Nass is going to draw a card here. So as you mentioned, he needs to find a Supreme Verdict to be able to get back in this.
And then that's step one. And let me tell you, the list has at least 6 steps on it.
Yeah. It really, really does. It is not even close to over if he has a verdict, as he's going to play a Mutavault for his land. And 3, 4. This is going to be a Jace.
It looks like it's going to be a Jace. That will put him at 1.
Yeah.
He's going to have to plus it to stay alive.
Yep. He's hanging on. Barely. Yep, and he is going to plus it just like you mentioned.
Well, now the attack is only for 4. Matt will go to 1. What that does mean is that if Brian just jams the Elspeth here, those 1/1s become very scary.
Yeah. Because he has to keep ticking up.
Yeah, Matt would have to draw. Well, no, Matt would be fine. He could draw Verdict and Detention Sphere and take care of everything. There's still this problem that Brian, Brian right now has free reign to minus his Jace to continue just to push this threat advantage he has.
And that's exactly what he's going to do. Cash in the Jace, show you a Glare of Heresy, Temple of Silence, and a Nightveil Spectre. And just more gas, gas, gas.
Yeah, more things that Matt needs to counter.
So it's Spectre versus. Heresy obviously going to be there to take care of a Detention Sphere or an Elspeth from Nass. Spectre is another threat.
Yeah, Spectre's a threat, but probably a low priority for Brian right now because he already has the access to so many cards. And yeah, so he does take the Glare and the land, which is really strong here.
So you see he's going to reorganize his resources. He's going to cast Detention Sphere. Gainsay is going to counter.
Really quickly Gainsay.
Gainsay, of course, that Brian did know about. But now here's another Detention Sphere that he can't Gainsay. Attack you, puts you down to 1.
Yeah, he wants to Matt to have to top deck the Verdict as opposed to being able to minus Jace to find the Verdict.
So Nass on tap, he'll take a draw.
And it's not a Verdict, it's a Hallowed Fountain.
Not sure if he has outs in this situation. Mutavaults can be on blocking duty, but that's not going to be great.
He may have a Divination. Oh, he has Detention Sphere for Sin Collector.
Okay. Mutavault, you're on chump blocking duty, my friend.
Yep, he has 2 Mutavaults there to chump. Be interesting to see whether or not he goes for to kill it or not. Oof, and a Glare of Heresy is huge there on Detention Sphere. Gets back Sin Collector, taking Matt's Gainsay.
See the hand there of just double Mutavault's going to try to block here on Blood Baron, but you see the hand right now doubled Hollow Fountain and Detention Sphere. Hero's Downfall is going to take care of one of those. Yeah,
and that was on the block, so Matt will lose both Mutavaults. Down to 6 lands, and most likely out of time. Well, Brian is down to 4 cards. That's a Matt. If he top stacks the Supreme Verdict, we still have a game.
Yeah, there's some thoughts. He needs to take care of this. I mean, I don't know how much of one we have, but as you
now the Elspeth is live.
Yeah. And there's a negate, and that is going to do it. So Braun-Duin, he moves on to 11-1, defeats Matt Nass, who started this tournament 10-0, but he's run off 2 consecutive losses. 1 to Alex Bertensini, 1 to BBD. He's still in perfectly good shape to top 8
Well, the good news